Hello and welcome to another episode with UltraBranded with Indhran. And today we have a fantastic guest. It's Erik Cornelius. Hi, Erik. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Indhran, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's been ages since we last actually had a had a drink together.
Yeah, I think that was in Korea before COVID, and now
Yeah.
we're back in the post-pandemic stage, so we're able to do that again. And I hope you can make it out here, and
Yeah, look,
we can do that again soon.
happily looking forward to it. So very quickly, just tell the guests. I mean, Erik is one of the geniuses when it comes to marketing, and that's why I had to have him on the show because I want to tap his brain about how he's building the brand. He's building a very special brand right now, and I want to hear all about it. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Erik. What are you doing these days, and how did you end up doing what you do?
Well, it's an interesting story. So I actually live in Korea. I've lived in Korea for the past 18 years. I have a family here. It's a good place to be. And there are tons of opportunities in the tech space, as you would expect. You know, the country that's produced Samsung and Hyundai and LG, and now big companies like Coupang and all these kind of unicorns that are rising up through the startup ranks as well. Um, but how did I get here? It's a long and convoluted story, but I've been in PR and marketing originally when I was here at first, and I worked mostly for big companies like LG and Samsung. Then about 10 years ago, I kind of transitioned into the startup space, um, started working primarily with smaller companies because I wanted to take something instead. You know, when I was working on, say, things like mobile phone launches for LG back in the day, that was taking it from maybe you do a great job with the marketing, and instead of selling 1 million devices, you sell 2 million devices. Well, I wanted to go from something that didn't exist at all to being able to get the first products out to market and help companies do that. So that was kind of the journey to where I am now. Along the way, I've had a couple of agencies doing that, but now I'm actually a full-time employee of a company called Mocha System in the access control space. And it is a company that's revolutionizing cloud-based access control as a service, putting mobile access credentials up front and doing this all around the world, despite the fact that the company was only launched in 2019.
Fantastic. So how would you go about building a brand of something so revolutionary like
Well, you know, it's tough because before you build the brand, you really have to build the product, and that's been where we're focused up until now. And you know, we have the benefit of being a spin-off of a larger company that's been in this industry for about 20 years and really made a name for themselves in biometrics. So they've got this strong reputation for quality. And we really wanted to leverage that strong reputation for quality, but put our own spin on it. And a big part of that spin is the fact that we're completely cloud based. So imagine being able to integrate your access control system with the cloud. What does that mean? Nobody knows what that means, right? Well, you know those little boxes where you have them by the door and you tap a card to get in the door. You know, and if it works properly, you don't even notice it. But the people behind the scenes, I can tell you, they really notice it. They notice how easy it is to administer. They notice what kind of data they can track. They notice, can they easily give passes to visitors? And they notice, does this thing scale with my company as well? So we have been building out a product in this space that really addresses a lot of the problems in the market. Um, and you know, how do you build a brand? Well, through having excellent service for your customers. So, you know, the first space we've gotten into with our product has been co-working, and it makes a lot of sense for our product. If you know anything about the co-working spaces, they tend to have a lot of different branches all spread around and then thousands of members. In fact, our biggest customer in Korea is called Fast Five. They're the largest co-working operator in Korea. They have something like close to 60 locations now and 30,000 members that they have to manage. And if you go to one spot, you should be able to use your credential to get in there just as easily as going across town and using it at another
That's
spot.
fantastic.
Yeah, so we're trying to enable this seamless ability to open to open doors, to book meeting rooms, to use hot desks, no matter where you go with the co-working spaces. And at the same time, if you can imagine this out into the future, imagine being able to book your membership in the app and then use that same app to open the door and do all of those other functions that I mentioned. So, yeah, getting back to the question of how do we build a brand around this, like I said, it's offering the right services to the right companies and making sure that they have an excellent experience using that service.
Absolutely. I always say marketing creates value, sales captures value, but branding actually keeps the customers coming back.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Tell me, what are your two rules for life then?
My two rules for life. I don't know if I have two rules for life, but there are a couple of things that I've started to realize over time. And one of those is that time is a non-renewable resource, right? So when I was younger, I thought, I'm going to be around forever. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to be able to do everything I want to do. But now, as I'm older, I have more experience, I have a family, I realize that time is extremely precious. So we have to choose what we put it toward. And that informs my professional life, my personal life, all of this. And it also, I guess, kind of related to this is that my coworkers might refer to this as Erik's law. But Erik's law is that Erik is wrong 70% of the time, especially like the first thing I say. If you ask me, how should we approach this? How should we go about this? I'm wrong 70% of the time. And that means that it doesn't mean that I'm especially wrong, more wrong than other people. But what it does mean is that everything needs to be tested, everything needs to be evaluated, and having more data to do that is extremely important.
Yeah, most of the time people go with a gut feel kind of a thing, and it's very impulse, like systems one thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a couple of examples. Just recently, we redid our entire website, and we were focused in that process on conversion copywriting. How do we get people to take next steps throughout our sales funnel? And rather than just trusting whatever we came up with, we did testing through user testing tools online and made sure that what we were writing in terms of our copy and the way that we were placing it on the page with the images was making the right impression. People could understand what we're talking about, get the right impression, and want to take the next step. And I think you have to be scientific with that and take those steps if you're going to be effective. I mean, it also carries over to our product development. And I think that, throughout my time working with startups, I inevitably get wrapped up not just in the promotional side of marketing, but in the product side of marketing too, right? Because it's product, place, price, and promotion. Everybody just thinks about promotion, but with the product side as well, you have to be in communication with the people who are ultimately going to be using the product and get their input, not just asking them what is the thing that you want, but talking them through scenarios to really understand how they would use something. And then once you put the product out in the market, seeing what the response is to it and making those changes. I think that kind of build, measure, learn loop that we learn about with startups applies equally to building a product as it does to building a brand and building a marketing campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these virtuous loops are definitely the way to go. Growth loops, I call them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So what's the one thing? I mean, if you've had failure in your life, right? What's the one thing that
Sure.
that you think everyone should learn from a failure that you've encountered?
Learning from failure is, I mean, it's so basic now, right? I mean, we can't have every project succeed. I'll be really honest with you. You know, I've had my own companies, and sometimes they've done well for a while, and then at some point, maybe they start to do less well. And I think that whatever it is, you just have to look for what did you get out of this project? What did you learn from it? And how can you apply that next? Because everything I learned from my previous company, where I was working with startups and quite a few startups actually to bring their products to market, I'm applying all of that now at Mocha, with our product development, with our marketing, and also harkening back to my previous days in corporations where I was doing a lot of people management as well. I'm once again managing a 9-person team at my current company. So learning these things and not being too hard on yourself, I guess that's what I would take away from failure.
And I guess it builds character, as to say, as
Yeah, I think so too. I guess the other the other thing to learn from failure is to always be, open with the people who matter the most. I'm very fortunate to have a loving and supportive family who understand this crazy world of technology and startups that I've decided to be a part of, and can ride through the hard times with me and enjoy the great times as well. But to make that happen, communication is really key, and not being afraid to share those fears and those triumphs with the people. It's very important.
and obviously the 70% rule, because
Yeah, of course.
you gotta just take it with the.
Well, I mean, but I'm very upfront about that too, because I really do believe when I was a punk kid, when I was like getting into the marketing industry, when I was in my early 20s, I remember having a big, not fight, but like a big disagreement with one of my bosses, and she had been in the industry for at least 10 years longer than I had. And I had this angle that I really wanted to push for a customer, and it was beautifully artistic. I had this whole thing like weaving in the story from 50 years ago that happened in Korea with the Korean War and all this stuff, but it was completely inappropriate for the client's needs, for the customer's needs. And, it all comes full circle, because then when I had my own agency as well, I saw young people who were very enthusiastic about things and wanted to push for an idea, but maybe that idea wasn't quite right for what the people paying us actually needed, and maybe not in their best interest in the long run as well. So, having to open up your mind to not just the immediate thing in front of you, but to the longer term implications of what you're doing as well.
Sometimes you just got to go through what you got to go through, because you can only connect the dots going backwards, as Steve Jobs says, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did you discover your favorite brand? Let's talk about your favorite brand, and how did you discover it, and what does it say about
Yeah, I guess I've just become so skeptical lately. It, it's hard for me to say that I have a favorite brand anymore, because maybe I know too much about what happens behind the scenes. But I've become kind of jaded to all of this, really. So my favorite brands might be kind of non-brands now, companies that are not trying too hard to promote themselves in that way, I guess. Because you can probably see I'm not wearing any kind of like flashy branded clothing. I don't have any big brands behind me here in the office. It's just kind of appreciating some of the smaller things in life. But yeah, okay, if I have to name some brands, it would be brands that are really committed to the craft they're doing now. So I love some of the companies in the bicycling industry, for example, because that's one of my hobbies. So Specialized, for example, makes fantastic bikes. And their branding is based around the sports marketing of supporting the athletes and also around just having top quality products. But at the same time, I really appreciate some of the brands that offer a wider range of price points, perhaps. So, Giant is a company out of Taiwan that has also embraced this kind of branding. But even newer than that, we're seeing companies like Elves out of China that instead of sponsoring these top tier athletes in Europe and the US, they're sponsoring athletes in the Philippines and getting Filipino cyclists to ride their frames and their wheels in UCI competitions. So, you can see that this kind of brand that's going to put a lot of work into the quality of their product doesn't have to be based in a Western country in order to get up to a higher level. This is kind of like a new breed of Chinese company that's going to succeed based on the quality of their product at a much higher price point than you would expect for a typical Chinese product.
So how does that relate to what you're doing at Mocha System?
It doesn't at
Any way
all.
to bring that forward?
How do I bring that back around? No, well, I guess there's a personal commitment that I have to making sure that we have high quality products, and I know that our CEO has a similar commitment. He's actually a very good engineer as well, so he brings that perspective to it as well as the business perspective. But yeah, I think throughout everything we're doing, we're one, focused on quality, and second, trying to get really close to the customer. So, for example, in a few weeks, I'm going to an exhibition, and I'm not going to one of the biggest security conferences in the world. I'm going to a smaller local security conference in the UK that's only for local companies in the UK. And the reason that we're going to that is because the quality of the feedback we can get about a single market and learn about that single market in depth and talk to the people who really who really are the decision makers there and need the product to function a certain way. That's something that we can only get at a smaller conference like that. A month later, it looks like I may be heading out to Spain for something similar. And later on this week, I'm going to a conference here in Korea. And again, it's just being able to get very close to those customers and focus on a few markets at a time before we try to just take the entire world by storm. And I think part of that is being realistic. So if you're working at a smaller company, you have to be realistic about your resources and how you allocate those resources. And this is something that doesn't fall under under Erik's law, where where I'm wrong 70% of the time. I've tested this. I know it's true because I've tested it so many times.
It's
If you
Erik's second
try,
law now.
yeah, if you
After
try,
testing.
well, yeah, you've got to learn from your past, right? But if you try to go too big too fast, especially if you're dealing in overseas markets where your company is not based, you're really going to spread yourself thin if you go too far too fast. I mean, even when I've talked to companies in the past that are going into, say, like the US from Korea, I always try to advise them to not try to do a nationwide launch first. Look at one market. You know, the US has a lot of different markets that in some cases can be as big as another country. So, you know, focus on the West Coast first, or just focus on LA first, or focus on New York first, or focus on Dallas, Texas first. Something that's manageable as a first step before you try to take an entire country. And you know, with Western companies coming into Asia, it can be much the same. They see Asia as this one big homogenous uh, area, and it's like, are you kidding? Do you know how many countries there are here? Do you know how many languages there are here? Do you know that some countries have GDP below 10,000, some have GDP above like 40,000 per capita? It's just an incredibly diverse region, and you have to focus in more. I mean, you're primarily in Indonesia, right? I mean, how big is the population of Indonesia now? I can't
Yeah,
imagine taking that
300,
entire market.
300. Yeah, more than 300
Yeah,
million. Yes, that's right.
yeah, at
Yeah,
300 million,
and
it's
there's so
almost
many
the
different
same.
geographies as well.
Yeah, and it's almost the same population as the U.S. And the economic stratification between the urban areas and the rural areas is incredible. The way that people approach things like online shopping, if they live in the city versus out in the kampung, it's incredibly different. So it's just something that everyone should keep in mind. And I guess maybe that brings it around to also, you know, take a local guide along for the journey too. I mean, if you're trying to get into a new market, then make sure that you have somebody who can help you along the way and who actually knows what's happening in that market.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you, Eric. I mean, this has been a really, really good insight into how Mocha system is actually going international and really going granular, very targeted, but really very intelligently approaching market expansion. So we're going to wrap up now, but how can we learn more about you? What can we learn about Mocha system? Where can we get more information? How can we buy your products? How can we give you money?
Well, if you want to give me money, I can just give you my bank account number. But no, I think it's better to give Mocha the money. So our website is airfob.com. That's AIRFOB.com. And there you can find out more about the product. What we're doing now is in the access control industry. So it's how you get into spaces, but we're doing it differently because it's access control as a service. And if you want to know how you could get it in your own space, look at the case studies on our site, look at the industry areas on our site. And if you like what you see at the very top of the site, there's a where to buy button that tells you where you can find a local dealer who can help you get it into your office or your home or school, wherever you happen to be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eric. Really, really enjoyed the insights you provided today. Would love to have you back. Any last words?
Well, I just hope I can get as much insight from you at some point in the future as I tried to share today. And always keep in mind that 70% of whatever I just said is wrong anyway, so take it with a grain of salt.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.